Hello and welcome to Let the Bird Fly, a podcast about living freely in a world given back to us. This is Wade here in the podcast studio, joined by no one for an episode today, a brief episode. We're a little behind on episodes, and we apologize. That's partly our fault, and I guess partly our fault as well. And we had lost one episode because of some tech issues that we had, and then some other stuff fell through. But I wanted to come and have at least a brief episode here today on what I think will be a very practical topic. Michael is in Africa right now, so he cannot join us. I'm not sure where Jason is. He is somewhere, I assume in the United States of America. And I had been in the mountains for a family vacation and in Michigan and elsewhere. And so we haven't had a chance to really come together to do much the last few weeks. But I have gotten a number of questions about the lectionary, both in the parish and from others who have reached out. And so I wanted to do a brief episode on the lectionary, what that is, and especially how we can use it to our benefit. I think maybe when I have the guys with me, I can do a more extended episode on the history of the lectionary, the various lectionaries that are out there. But for today, I wanted to hit on what is the lectionary and how can we use it, and how can we use it especially devotionally. So I don't want to say just for the laity, because I think this is good for pastors as well in their personal lives, their private lives. But how can we use the lectionary beyond simply on Sunday morning in the divine service? And so that is what we will be talking about today. I just wanted to briefly put a plug in. Michael's book, Peter, Theologian of the Cross, is now out from Northwestern Publishing House. You can get your hands on that through Northwestern Publishing House. I'm guessing Amazon as well. I got a free copy because I wrote a foreword for it because I'm just a great friend like that. But encourage you to check that out. It's a nice little book. I think many will find it helpful. Very pastoral, very practical. Peter, Theologian of the Cross, by my dear friend and colleague, the Reverend Dr. Michael Berg. But today I want to talk about the lectionary, what it is, and how we can use it. And so the lectionary, this will be a good episode to, I guess, remind you of the importance or the value of having a hymnal in your household. Now, this is the Blue Wisconsin Synod hymnal, Christian worship. You may have a Burgundy Lutheran Service book if you're in the Missouri Synod, or the Evangelical Lutheran Hymnary, which I believe is a black book, if I'm recalling, and the ELS. But the value of having a hymnal at home to aid you in some of these things. So what is the lectionary? Well, the lectionary is kind of the organized text for the church year. It's what the church will read through in the church year. And I'm saying the lectionary, but there's not only one. Even in our hymnal, you'll find there's a 3-year lectionary. Years A, B, and C, and each year focuses on a different gospel especially. And then the historic 1-year lectionary. And that's less commonly used in our circles, but it is still used and can be pretty valuable. One of the values of the historic 1-year lectionary is if you like to read old sermons, you can find just centuries of good sermons on the text from the historic 1-year lectionary. If you want to read Luther, Walther, Gerhardt, others, you can find that with the historic 1-year lectionary. Most churches, though, are using the 3-year lectionary, and there's different versions of this 3-year lectionary. But most former Synodical Conference Lutherans, there's going to be a lot of similarities in what is being used for that Sunday, including other denominations that are using the historic liturgy as well. So the lectionary is what your pastor in most of our churches is looking at each week and saying, okay, this is the focus of the readings for the service. And so this will be kind of what I use to pick hymns, whether individually or if there's a committee, organist, et cetera, that the pastor works with. This will help kind of drive the hymns that are selected. This will help kind of maybe shape the visits the pastor is doing that week, what he's talking about with the shut-ins and others that he might be visiting. And so it kind of sets the tone for each week for the pastor and for the church. Now, often the pastor is going to look at those three readings and pick one to be the sermon text. Now, the older I get, the more I like to hit on all three lessons um, in the sermon to kind of walk through how they fit together. I find great value in that. But there's going to be one that kind of drives the sermon most often. And historically, that's usually going to be the Holy Gospel. The Holy Gospel sets the tone. It's the third reading, it's the one we rise for. That sets the tone for everything else. And we read the other two usually in light of the Holy Gospel for that Sunday. In the lectionary, we also have psalms. We have a psalm of the day. And so each Sunday, we usually sing a psalm, and that will be the psalm of the day. And then connected to that, to help drive home the theme, is not part of the lectionary, but it's helpful when you're focusing for the week ahead. There's also a hymn of the day. And this is usually an assigned hymn of the day. And of course, there's Christian freedom to pick something else, but it's sometimes nice to run with these. All of our churches are then singing the same hymn as the hymn of the day. And usually that hymn of the day is chosen very purposefully because it fits the lessons well. Something you can do in that regard then is if you know the hymn of the day and you have a hymnal at home, is to look at the hymns around that hymn, because often the hymns around that hymn in the hymnal are also going to be useful hymns if you're looking for something to pray through or to sing at home for that week. So the pastor is going to look at these three lessons. He's going to think about how they connect. If he has time, he's going to go through the Old Testament lesson in the Hebrew and the epistle, the second lesson, and the Holy Gospel in the Greek. Maybe if he has time, he will look at what others have said about these texts, whether that be commentaries or postilla, sermon books that others have preached on this text. Maybe he might even look back at something he's done before with these texts as he prepares what he wants to say, to proclaim law and gospel, and to apply the text to the people in front of him that day and in that place. Now, one of the knocks you'll sometimes hear on the lectionary is that pastors might just end up preaching the same sermon again and again every 3 years. They just recycle what they've done, and I would say that certainly that does sometimes happen, but it's not something I think that happens all the time, and it's not something I would recommend. There are weeks where things are just crazy busy for the pastor, and maybe he needs to pull back or pull out the filing cabinet or go on his computer and find something from 10 years ago that he can adapt. But the point is to be going into these texts anew each time that we dig into them. And this is something that's not that difficult to do because these are rich texts. That's why they're chosen to be in the lectionary for the year. And every time the pastor goes into these texts, he's going into these texts in a different setting, in a different place, perhaps, if he's taken a call, but with people who are in different places in their lives, congregations that are going through different things. And there's lots that can be drawn out of this. Something I sometimes like to do is to look back and see all the different directions I've gone with a text. And you might say, well, a text has one meaning. How can you do that? No, we believe that the meaning of the text is the meaning of the text, but these texts are packed with things that can be applied in different ways, that speak in different situations to people. And so there can be things that stand out in those texts that maybe don't stand out as much the next time that you go through it, because something else seems to stand out as a hook, as something to really latch on to for preaching that Sunday. But what about you? What about you at home? Well, one of the purposes of the lectionary, and especially of the 3-year lectionary, was to make an attempt at getting people through a significant portion of the Bible in a year, and to hit on especially kind of the chief text, the chief passages, the chief stories for the life of Christ and the life of the church in the church year. And so these are good things for you to be reading ahead of time and to be reflecting on afterwards. Something I do each week is I put in the bulletin, the news and notes, what are the 3 lessons in the Psalm of the day for the coming week? And I think I need to start putting the hymn of the day in there as well for people. And this episode is a good reminder for me to do that. And one of the things I really enjoy, and I have one wonderful member each week who I can count on this as he comes to church or afterwards, is talking to people about what stood out to them as they read through these lessons in the week before they heard me preach on it. And this one member will sometimes say, as he's getting ready to go into church, here's the things he had. And it's fun to have him say that, and then me know what I'm thinking for the sermon and where I might go, and then we can talk a little bit afterwards. But the lectionary isn't just there then to kind of keep the pastor from chasing rabbits, going down rabbit holes or getting on his bully pulpit and just, whatever's going through his head, he's picking that week. The lectionary is also for the laity. It's so that you know what is coming and you can prepare for that Sunday. You can know what's going to be talked about, and you can be into these texts yourself, thinking about these things, praying about these things. And so I have on our website, rlcmilwaukee.org for Resurrection Lutheran, you can go to the tabs and a pattern for prayer, which is a template for how people might make use of these texts for the week in their morning or evening devotions. And they can either do this in the lead up to the week or reflecting back on the Sunday that came before. And usually what I'll do in there is have one day they read the first lesson, another day the second lesson, another day the Holy Gospel, one day the Psalm of the day, one day the hymn of the day. And in that way, they're able to kind of move through the propers for that week. I usually suggest they use the prayer of the day, which is in the bulletin, as a daily prayer for that week as well. But what can you do then when you're looking at these lessons and you want to work through them on your own during the week? Well, one of the things is to read through them each individually and not to race to read through them, but maybe to read through them a couple times in a day. Maybe to say, I'm going to read this lesson at breakfast and lunch and dinner. And these are short lessons. It's easy to do, or morning and evening. And see what stands out to me as I read them. If you have a couple translations at home, maybe I'm going to read this one in this translation, and this will be my evening translation. And after you've read through all three, each day maybe focusing on one, take time to say, how do they fit together? Is one quoting from the other? Is the Holy Gospel or the Epistle quoting from the Old Testament? Are they talking about a common theme or image? What is the law and the gospel in these lessons? What specifically are they saying? Why are these put together? How do they build off each other? What do they say to me? And then you can tie in the psalm of the day and perhaps the hymn of the day. The hymn of the day is a wonderful prayer as well. Take a verse a day or however many verses there are, and you can pray through that hymn. But to be intentional about what you're going to hear on Sunday. It's certainly on the pastor to prepare a good sermon, and by good sermon, I mean a textual sermon that applies the text to you. But it's also on us as parishioners, when we're not preaching, to gladly hear and learn. And the lectionary helps us to do that. It helps us to be prepared, to come in with questions for the text that we might have, to come in having prayed through these texts, to come in saying, what do these texts have to say to me? What do they tell me about how I should be living? What do they expose about how I haven't been living, if there are ways I should be or shouldn't be, and I've gone against God's will in those regards? What would they have me add to my life? What would they have me take away from my life? What do they say to me about life with neighbor? What do they say to me about life in the church? What do they say to my vocations, the different callings I have in life? These are all things that we can pray through and think through. So I'd encourage you, if you don't have a hymnal at home, to get one. And any of the American Lutheran Church bodies, hymnals are going to have the lectionary in them, as far as I know, or available online. And you can go to the front and you'll see the lectionary for the year, broken up in different ways in the different hymnals. Sometimes the minor festivals in there with suggested readings that you can use on those days as well, if you would like. But maybe think about that. And if you're a pastor, maybe think about encouraging that. Have these resources available in the bulletin or the newsletter or the insert, whatever it might be, so that your people can come familiar with the text. You'll find it helps you in your preaching, and it leads to a lot of good discussions. Afterwards, maybe you'll get the member who says, "Oh, I thought you were going to talk about this." Well, now you get to talk about this. Perhaps there's a chance in Bible class at the beginning to say, what did anybody think about those lessons today? Any questions from those? Anything you thought I would address that I didn't, or that you want me to unpack more? And these are all things that can help us be more intentional about how we go into the scriptures, how we encounter God and His Word, his infallible, his inspired word, and how we're able to kind of to really chew on it, and that's an image that the Bible uses, chewing on the text, pondering it, and digesting it. And so the lectionary is not meant to be kind of a lazy default. Here's 3 years worth of lessons, and once I get through this, I'm good. From the pastor standpoint, or as laity, okay, I'll learn these, I'll hear these every year. These are the stories I need to know. In fact, I bet these stories are fresh to you most times you hear them in the pews, because it's hard to remember 3 years worth of accounts and stories and applications, etc. And it's meant for the church to go through together. So this is a short episode, but it's just an encouragement to you to try to make use of that lectionary with your brothers and sisters in Christ. In your home, maybe it can guide your family devotions as well. And then in the life of the church, it's a fun thing. It's a joyful thing to be able to go through the scriptures together. And we'll go through them more meaningfully when we're all engaging them. And I guarantee to my brothers and sisters in the pews, your pastor will be excited if he hears that you are working through these lessons with him. That will invigorate him in his own study of the text and what he seeks to bring to you when he steps into the pulpit. Sorry, we've been behind a few episodes, hoping to get a few short episodes like this out for you, hopefully practical pastoral episodes in these shorter ones to give you something to chew on and then run with. We hope you are doing well. As always, we thank you for supporting the podcast. If you haven't, think about rating or reviewing on your favorite podcatcher. That really helps us. 5 stars really helps us with the algorithm so that people can find us and what we're doing. If you haven't liked the YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel yet, please consider doing so. We're really trying to kind of build things out on that platform as well. And it's a big help to us when you can support us in that way. We are trying to get helpful content out, and we would like that to reach as many people as possible. Meanwhile, hope you're doing well. Until next time, God bless. And as always, let the bird fly. Michael did send me a picture of a spider over in Malawi, and he said he zoomed it in to make it a little bit bigger than what it actually was, but it was enough to make me grateful to be in Milwaukee. But I think he's having a great time, and I know it's wonderful to get to meet those Christians over there, and so I hope the Lord blesses him and brings him safely home. And if anyone sees Jason, maybe just let us know. I'm starting to get worried. Maybe something has happened. He's been kidnapped. So feel free to, if you have a Jason sighting, send me a picture. Let me know.